Joining us now on the Michigan Megacast is the owner and operator of Tours Around Michigan. Candice Smith joins us now on the Michigan Megacast. Candice, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks so much. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, good to have you on. So Tours Around Michigan, you're the owner and the operator, a self-described storyteller, history lover, and tourism expert. As the owner of this business, what about running tours around Michigan excites you and impassions you about our Great Lakes state?
I'm kind of a history geek, so that doesn't hurt. But I love sharing the stories with people, whether they're visiting from other places or they're local from the area, because I find these really unique stories that most people haven't heard. And they're always really surprised at what we have here in Michigan. And even people that live here, like they don't realize the buildings they walked past a million times, or the statue and who it is or what it means, or even, what happened to the rapids in Grand Rapids, that sort of thing. So I love being able to just introduce people to a new way of looking at things. We create experiences also where we might set up tastings and stuff like that for groups, for private groups, and just introducing them to the great food we have here and all the great craft beverages, and just giving them a lot more than they expected, like having them walk away wanting to keep exploring and wanting to keep, coming downtown or going to a certain place or just exploring Michigan more. I really think it's a win for all of us, if somebody falls in love with Michigan a little bit more and wants to spend more time here.
So there's so many different ways to teach people, both Michiganders and visitors from the U.S. and around the world, about places like Michigan, about our history, about some of the interesting factoids about the Great Lakes state. Why tours as the vehicle for that teaching method?
Well, my background is international public relations and news, which is all storytelling. It's sort of my whole arc there, my origin story. And with tours, I get to be with people when they're treating themselves. So they're going on a special date, or they're having, a team bonding with their team, or they're at a conference, and it's a way for them to explore the area where they are. And so I really get people when they are treating themselves, when they're having fun, when they're spending family time together or friend time together or coworker time together. And so I like that my job is just really to bring joy, to get people to break away from, whatever is bothering them or giving them anxiety, and just enjoy a little bit, and I get kind of silly with it. I know I've talked to you guys before about my ghost tours, and I have people that I have creepy dolls that people carry during those, just because it's fun. And so, I love just having people being able to loosen up a little bit and laugh and I give them permission to be a little silly and to just relax and laugh about things and just kind of escape a little bit.
So these aren't your typical tours where you're on the back of a trolley or in a bus just traveling through a city or traveling through another location, and someone's up front with a microphone saying, on your left now is this or that, a little bit of a factoid, and then you're moving on. This really is an interactive experience people can go through with these tours from your organization.
It is, and I do. So I do all kinds of tours. So I also do the microphone on the bus kind of thing, because my walking tours, we're walking around town, getting up close to things. We have a lot of big motor coaches that come into Michigan, and so I sometimes will step on those motor coaches. But when I'm with people, I just had a veterans group this past week. And I was with them for 3 hours, so we started in like this historic lobby that's beautiful that was in the hotel where they were staying. And I talked about the history of the hotel and that Queens had stayed there. And, it was designed by the same people that designed Grand Central Station in New York, and helped them look at their own hotel in a new way. I took them down by the river, and we talked about the history of the river and how that changed. And then we all got on the motor coach, and I showed them around the city. And then I took them to our historic home district, got them off there a couple of times and walked around and talked about the different houses and the history, and how people, some notable people that lived in Grand Rapids. William Lear had a home here. He was actually recruited to come to Grand Rapids. So Learjet, he was a great inventor, and he invented a lot here. And people that really changed the world, that lived here in Michigan or are from Michigan. And those are such great stories to share. So whether I'm doing that walking around with people or doing it from a vehicle, I just enjoy helping open people's eyes and helping them see what they have around them in a different way.
We're joined by Christine Smith. Candice Smith. She is the owner and operator of Tours Around Michigan, joining us on the Michigan MegaCast. More information can be found on toursaroundmichigan.com. That's toursaroundmichigan.com. And you mentioned a lot of these tours are able to show a really extensive look at the city and the history of Grand Rapids. When people visit Michigan and looking for a big city experience, so often they go to Detroit and they kind of leave Grand Rapids, which is another major city, a top 100 media market also here in the United States, out of the fold. What about Grand Rapids makes it such an interesting and unique city, given its history, but also that it is a rather large city right here on the west side of the state?
Mm-hmm. If you look up Grand Rapids specifically, you'll see it tops a lot of lists. Places to live, places to start a business, places to raise a family. It's a top LGBT friendly city. It's a very artistic city. It is a beer city USA. We're top in distillery. We're a foodie city. So it has all these things combined that just really make it this amazing experience. It's also very walkable downtown. So when people come, they can walk to a lot of different things, museums and events. But I think the biggest thing about Grand Rapids is this energy in it. It is just this very community-oriented energy. It's an energy where people love living here. They love being here. All year round, we have events downtown. So in the summer, it's like swing dancing every Tuesday, and they do, we have all these different festivals happening. But even in the winter, we have ice sculptures, and we have things that go for weeks in the winter, where we have, one of the largest ice sculpture festivals in the nation, and, all this light up art because it gets darker sooner. So we have all this art that lights up and people can walk around when it's dark outside. And of course, we have Art Prize, which is an international art competition that is in Grand Rapids every year in end of September, early October. And we have thousands of pieces for that, like 2,000 pieces. And it's in the river, it's on the bridges, it's indoors, it's outdoors, it's everywhere. And so there is this energy here that is just positive and really makes it just a good experience for people, whether they're visiting or they're living here. It's just a really nice experience. And, we have other cities in Michigan too that are doing great things, especially along the Lake Michigan Lakeshore, over on the East Coast, of Michigan, in the Saginaw Midland area. There are a lot of awesome things over there that allow people to have these unique experiences that really stick with them.
Yeah, each of these cities in Michigan, large cities, medium-sized cities, even the smaller cities, really have their own identity and their own feel and their expertise that makes them unique to Michigan, but even unique beyond Michigan and really interesting. And that's why it's important to have organizations like yours that are really giving people that inside look so that they're learning really a lot about where they're going while also having the fun in those cities that they're looking for. We're joined on the Michigan MegaCast by Candice Smith, owner and operator of Tours Around Michigan. More information can be found on their website, toursaroundmichigan.com. That's toursaroundmichigan.com, or you can call them for more information at 616-970-4825. 616-970-4825 for more information about the tours, including public tours and private tours. So there's a lot of options for people if they want to take tours in Grand Rapids or in other areas to get the experience that they're looking for. Can you talk about some of those options that they have and how those differ from maybe the public tours versus the private tours?
So the private tours, many times, it's usually typically a group of people that want a unique private experience for them. So that can just be an evening thing where we're going on like a ghost tour and then going into haunted places for tastings and food and that kind of thing. I do a lot of corporate convention type of tours with that, or bachelorette parties. They really like that too. But some of the private tours I've been getting, and I've seen this change since the pandemic hit, and that is people, now that they can travel, they're really looking for the experience that is just for them. They don't want to deal with crowds. They don't want to deal with, being with other people. They just want what they want, and they're traveling and they want it the way they want it when they want it. And so I am being hired more often by an individual or a couple or a family that really just wants me with them, that wants somebody from Tours Around Michigan to be with them, sometimes 5-6 days, just to actually take them to different parts of the state so they can just get the most out of their own trip here.
We're joined by Candice Smith, the owner and operator of Tours Around Michigan, joining us on the Michigan MegaCast, a variety of private tours, including a historic home tour, custom tours, virtual tours, and more. And then the public tours include the entire city of Grand Rapids, a ghost tour for those looking for a little more of a spooky experience, as well as many others, such as the art and murals, breweries in Beer City, wine tour, a distillery tour, a church tour, and more. So many different facets of Grand Rapids you can learn about with Tours Around Michigan. We are, of course, as I said, joined by Candice Smith, the owner and operator of Tours Around Michigan on the Michigan MegaCast. Mentioned in the private tours is the virtual tours. Can you take us on a journey of what those experiences are like? Because for so many people, this is a great option for them still, as we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, even though we're at a different stage than maybe we were 18 months ago, 2.5 years ago, at the beginning of this process. Tell us about the virtual tours and how people in Michigan and outside of Michigan can take benefit in learning about our state from the comfort of their own home.
Yeah, and so right now the virtual tours are private groups. So usually private groups will hire me to do this for whatever number of people they have. And I have a couple different types, and I also can develop them in other topics if it interests people. But what I've done, I have a series of 5 churches in Grand Rapids, and each one talks about a different church. And one thing I love about the churches, of course, they're beautiful, the architecture and the art, but the history and immigration history is so closely linked to our homes of faith here in the state. Here in Grand Rapids, we would have people that would come over from a village in Poland, and they would start bringing their friends and their neighbors and their family. And so we have practically a huge chunk of this village in Poland that moved here to Grand Rapids, and they all lived in the same neighborhood, and they started a church. And they built that church. And then when they built their huge church, which is now our basilica here in Grand Rapids, they modeled it after this medieval church that was in their village in Poland. And so the immigrant story, I think, is so fascinating, and our churches are so closely linked to that. They would help support people in bringing people over. They would find them jobs. They would find them a place to live. And for many years, the church was their life. It was everything. It was their social life. People were connected through work. In fact, with the basilica that I mentioned, we have the basilica on one block. Right next to it on the next block is Whitcomb Furniture, where a lot of Polish immigrants who attended the basilica, so it's all just connected together. And there was a big furniture strike in 1911, where that particular furniture company had a crowd of about 2,000 people around it who were protesting and then bringing in some other workers during the strike. And it was not just the workers, who also attended the church next door, but it was the workers, their wives, the children. Like, it's the whole neighborhood that's surrounding this furniture factory. And that's because that was their whole life right there. It was work, it was church, it was family, and that was their life. And that's the story of a lot of immigration, how people got here, why they settled here. And even that particular church is on Grand Rapids West Side. Still, the West Side identifies very heavily Polish, German, Lithuanian. Those are the people that came there, and they just established their own identity that even 170 years later is still in place. Like, that's still the identity there.
And it's such an interesting story and really speaks to the gradual development of the city of Grand Rapids over time. I heard so much as a kid because my dad, as well as his brother and his sisters, grew up on the west side of the state in Grand Haven. And so whenever we would drive through Grand Rapids and see the big city skyline on the highway, he would tell us a story about, yeah, it never really used to be that way. When I was growing up, there was a few buildings there. You drive by, you're in Grand Rapids, and then he'd make a certain gesture because of how the buildings used to look that I cannot make on television at this moment in time. So we'll move on from there. So tell us a little bit more about how that factors in to some of the history of Grand Rapids that goes into this tour. It's just how much of that development has been from all of these different elements of the community kind of coming together in a variety of different ways, all of which you can explore with tours around Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And we did have a lot of different people immigrating, not only from Europe, and they would come in as there were things happening in Europe. So there would be a war or something like that. And so you'd get a big flood of Germans in the 1850s and a big flood of Polish starting in the 1860s, and so you'd start getting these people moving in. And, we have some of the buildings today, like the Basilica, which is modeled after a building in Poland. But also as business grew and that sort of thing, so did our skyline, and so did and so did the uses for those different buildings. So we have a building here built in 1892 called the Trust Building. And when that was built in 1892, it was considered a skyscraper. It was about 10 stories high. And that was a skyscraper, and there were postcards about it being so tall. It was an important business building. In fact, President Ford had his first law office there after he graduated from Yale. President Roosevelt gave a campaign speech out of the windows there in 1900. And so, as these buildings became more prominent and important, other things would develop around them because they wanted to be close to this important building. And also, like with many cities, and this happened all over Michigan in the 50s and 60s, we lost a lot of the really beautiful buildings we had through urban renewal. So at the time, there was federal money available to demolish these old buildings that were seen as, old fashioned and dirty and broken. And so they would demolish these buildings and then build new ones, that were more cement and that sort of thing. And at the time they were considered modern, and they would bring people back to the city after everyone had escaped to the suburbs. And, so that really changed our landscape too. And I've done private tours on urban renewal and urban planning and that sort of thing for some like specialty groups, because it really did change the way Grand Rapids looked. And Grand Rapids actually became a leader in historic preservation because of that, because we lost some really beautiful buildings. And then our historic home district now is one of the largest in the nation in the sense of the footprint. And so that was slated to be demolished, like a good portion of it for a project. And so the people who lived there created the historic home district. So they registered 1,300 homes and then worked with state government to use laws that would prevent those homes from being demolished using federal funds, so urban renewal money. And so they were able to do that and save the historic home district, so save Heritage Hill. And that law that was used here in Michigan that was, cultured to save Heritage Hill, that has actually been used as an example nationally for other historic preservation laws. So Michigan was really at the forefront of that historic preservation movement that came after urban renewal because many cities, many states had lost their own beautiful buildings because it made sense politically or they thought it would bring people back to the city. And so we're really proud here in Michigan, you know, to be able to be the leaders in historic preservation and that other people saw what we were doing and decided to do it in their state also.
Michiganders love their history, they love their cities, and they love to tell the stories of the Great Lakes state. Candice, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.